Hello everyone, welcome to our first lecture. So we will start today this video and I will be presenting each chapter of the book, which is called Principle of Economics, and the author is Grigory Mankiw. I will quickly show you the cover page. So this book has around 36 chapters, and I will try to summarize each chapter as I go through this series of lectures. So the first chapter is about 10 principles of economics. The word economy itself is driven from a Greek word called oikonomos, and the meaning of this word is one who manages a household. So economy in Greek means someone who manages a household. First, you might think like what the economy has to do with the household, but if we talk more about the economy, we will understand that most of the decisions that a household is going to take or make is the same as an economy will face, and an economy will also take the same type of decisions. For example, if you are in a household, in a family, there is one person who is working, who is earning, another person is working to prepare food, and another are taking care of children. So there are different decisions taken within a household. And basically the same decisions will be also taken in an economy, but it's mostly about the economic perspective of that. To put it in a simple word, economy is how a society manages its scarce or limited resources. And it's the same with the family. So in a family, one or two person earns, you have $1,000 or $2,000 income per month, and then you decide how do you want to spend that money. So we can see that economy has much to do with a household, the same as it has to do with a society as a whole. Okay, as I said, economy is about managing resources. So the first thing is that resources are scarce, so they are limited. This term is called scarcity, which is defined as the limited nature of society's resources. So if you think about whatever resources we have, it could be in terms of money, cars, air, or whatsoever. These are, of course, they are a lot, but still they are resources and they are limited. And economic basically is the study of how societies manages its scarce resources. So what an economy does is that it decides on its resources and it tries to manage them in a better way. Okay, that was the first few words. Now I will proceed as following. So all these 10 principles are divided in 3 categories, and I will go through these 3 categories and also the relevant principles to these categories. So the first category is how people make decisions. So we start with the individual decision making. As a person, how do you make decisions? The first principle is people face trade-offs. What does that mean is whenever you want to make a decision, you have to choose between different options. For example, as a student, you might want to spend your time studying for the university, um, but you can also use the same time to do a sport or to meet a friend or to do shopping or something else. So you have to make a decision. What do you want to do? And of course, if you choose to study, you cannot use the same time to go and do shopping or to meet a friend. So you always have to trade off between different options that you have. It's the same with the family as well. So if there is a family and you have an income, then you have to decide where do you want to spend your money, your income, because your money is limited, your income is limited, and then you have to choose where do you want to spend that money. And if we put the same concept for a group of people who live in a society, they might have face similar trade-off decisions. For example, as a society as a whole, should we spend more money on defense of our country, or should we spend more money to support, for example, agriculture, so there is more food and supplies for the population? One of the most important trade-off which is faced by society is efficiency and equality. So these are the two main concepts of economics. I will define them, what does each term means. Efficiency means the property of society getting the most it can from its scarce resources. So society, as we said, has limited resources, and efficiency would mean that we get maximum benefit from these resources um, and in its best form possible. For example, we say a car is efficient because it uses or it burns little fuel but drives a long distance. So efficiency is to use resources in its best possible way, which will maximize our utility. And equality, I will define equality, it's the property of distributing economic prosperity uniformly among the members of society. So this principle of equality means that the resources are distributed equal among the member of a society. For example, in a country, if a country want to focus on inequality, then it will give more efforts and implement policies which will make sure most of the, like all the people, they have a basic standard of living. So they have a house, they have a car, they have something to eat and a decent job. So that will be an equal society. But these two principles, they are basically in conflict with each other. So when we are trying to be efficient, we cannot be equal at the same time. I will give an example, and I hope that will be a bit easy to clarify these two concepts. For example, if the government want to distribute the income of the people in such a way that's more equal, so that will mean that there will be high taxes on people who earn higher incomes, and that taxes will go to the poor people who do not have good services or who do not have good jobs. What is the negative side of this policy is that those people who have been working hard and those who have been very successful and those who have earned a lot of income, they will feel discouraged by this policy. They will think like we are working hard, so we should keep all the money and all the income that we have learned. So they don't want to give this high taxes. So these are the two concepts of economic concepts which can easily explain this principle of trade-off. Okay, let's go to the second principle. The second principle is the cost of something is what you give up to get it. So everything has a cost, and the cost is whatever you give up, that is the cost of that decision that you take. Okay, for example, if you want to go to college and leave your job and go to college, so so the cost of going to college is that you give up your work and your income and so forth and so on. So when you make decision, uh, your decision has its cost. And you have to consider, as we will go deeper in this book, we will see what are the different economic costs attached to different decisions. And one important concept here is the opportunity cost. And opportunity cost is, the definition is whatever you must given up to obtain some item. So if you're going to the university, your opportunity cost is your job. So that means that is the cost of going to the college, is that you have to leave your job. So when you're making decisions, you have to always consider what are the costs attached to my decision and how could my decision be maximized given the cost of your decisions. Okay, now we will go to our third principle. The third principle is about rational people think at the margin. Okay, in economics we usually say rationality or rational people. What does that mean? It means that people who systematically and purposefully do the best they can to achieve their objective. So a rational person is someone who make a wise decision, so who knows what is the costs attached to it or what are the benefits to it, and he tries to maximize his own benefit by making such a decision. Okay, and there is one another concept that I want to explain. It is called marginal change. So the marginal change is a small incremental adjustment to a plan of action. So marginal actually means the edge. So we will, in most of the economic concept, we will see how, for example, buying one more kilo of apple will increase your utility. So we don't usually say how much apple you should buy, but we will try to base our decision in a way that if you buy one more kilo of apple, how would that increase your satisfaction or utility? And this is actually the concept of this principle, that rational people who are wise, who make a decision which are sound and correct, they always think on marginal. So they will think, okay, if I go one step further, what are the costs attached to it and what are the benefits to attach to it. So if the costs are higher than the benefits, you will not take that step. But if the costs are lower and benefit is higher, then you will take that step or that decision. Okay, that leads us to our fourth principle, which is called people respond to incentive. Okay, what is incentive? Incentive is something that induces a person to act, and people respond to incentive. I will give a general example is that, for example, you go to buy a phone, you see the price of different phones in the market, but you see one which has a reduced price on it. So this reduction in price will probably make you to buy this phone. Or for example, you go grocery and to do shopping, and then you already know what are the cost of different food items, but you see that one item is on sale, so you know that okay, this food is normally at this price, but now it is cheaper, so it makes you to buy that product, although you will probably normally don't buy that one, but now that the cost has reduced, the price has reduced, so that will give you an incentive to buy that good. And incentive also works in a market in a way that people respond to the prices. So if the price of Apple, for example, increases, people will respond by buying less apples. And on the contrary, if the prices of Apple decreases, so people will try to buy more apples. Okay, so now we will go. So far we have discussed four principles, and it was about individual decision making. So I will quickly name them, how people make decisions. So that was our main title. And the first principle was people face trade-offs. Second, the cost of something is what you give up to get it. Third, rational people think at the margin. Four, people respond to incentive. So these are the four principles related to individual decision making. Our second title of this chapter is how people interact. So now we continue the same principles, but now we consider people as a group or in a society. So the fifth principle is trade can make everyone better off. The concept of trade, probably you have heard a lot in the news that Chinese export are hurting, for example, America, or the cheap product from China has resulted in a trade war between the different countries across the world. But according to this principle, and we will see this in details in the following chapters, that trade actually makes everyone better off. So it's not hurting anyone, or it's not hurting any country or anything else, but actually trade is beneficial for all the parties who are involved in international trade, for example. There is a good example in this book. It says, like, for example, there is a job announcement in your city, and everyone is competing for this job. Of course, for example, if your family members are also there to compete for this job, it doesn't mean that it is something bad because other people are also competing for the same job. But what does it mean is that competition is good in an economy which will make people to be more specialized in what they do, and it will increase the productivity of people, and it will also bring mutual benefits to those who engage in the international trade. Okay, principle 6. It says that markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. As you know, there are two main concept of market. So on one side is the communism, or the communist way of managing markets, and another is the free market or market economy. So these are the two extremes of how an economy can work. And as you know that after the fall of the Soviet Union and the Eastern Europe in 1980s and early 1990s, most of the communism system of managing the economy has been abandoned. So most of the economies nowadays, they are mostly on market economy. Okay, I will define what the market economy is. So market economy is an economy that allocate resources through the decentralized decisions of many firms and households as they interact in the market for goods and services. So on one hand, there's a communism centralized system of managing the economy, and on the other hand, there's the free market, and it's a decentralized way of managing economy. And according to this principle, most of activity is good when it's managed by the free market economy. Of course, we will talk more about this principle later on, but as an example of the market economy, here it's the concept of invisible hand, or the price, which was first introduced by Adam Smith in his book An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, which was published in 1776. It's basically a very one of the first and very important economic book, which has laid down the fundamental of economics. And in this book, Adam Smith explains the concept of invisible hand, which is actually the price. In a nutshell, what this concept says is that a price of one product gives signals to the market, both to the buyer and also to the producer, what goods and services they should produce. So price is actually a signal for the consumer as well as for the producer to arrange their activities. For example, if the price of apple are increasing, so this gives a signal for the consumer that apple are expensive now, so consumer will buy less of that. On the other hand, producer of apples, they will see that now the price of apple has increased, so they are offering more apples in the market so they can benefit more from this situation. And as a result of this, the market, as a result of change in this price, the market will come to an equilibrium, and it will actually benefit both the consumer and producer. We will talk about this concept more in detail, but this concept says that markets are usually a good way to organize economic activities as compared to socialism and communism method of managing the market. Okay, the seventh principle is about governments can sometimes improve market outcomes. So as we said before, that in a free market, government are not that much intervening, and it's the price mechanism which decides how much of a good and services will be produced and consumed. But sometimes government can also intervene in the market to make things better. So government sometimes can step into the market economy to improve the situation for everyone. The first thing is about the property rights. So the market system will not work without government ensuring the property right. What is the property right? It's the ability of individuals to own and experience, to exercise control over scarce resources. For example, in communist era, most of the people, most of the asset, for example, houses and cars were owned by the state. So individuals were not allowed to own one, for example. Um, but in a free market, individuals have the right to have this property rights. So they can own a house, they can own a car, and they can own a firm, a company, and so on. But if there is no government, if there is no rule of law, if there is no police, and if there is no jurisdictional system, then the enforcing of these measures will be difficult. So that's why we need government to to improve the market outcome by ensuring the property rights, for example. There are three other concepts that I will first explain and will try to make an example out of it so you can understand it more. The other situation could be a market failure. What's a market failure? It's a situation in which a market left on its own fails to allocate resources efficiently. So when a market fails is that the market has failed and then the resources are not allocated in a proper way. So in this case, the government can intervene and improve the situation. The second term here is called externality, and it is defined as the impact of one person's action on the well-being of bystander. So externality is what actions you as a person take and how your action actually influence other people or those who are in the same society. So that's called externality. So if I make a decision that would be good for me but that will not be good for others, I'm causing an externality. Externality could be both positive or negative. We will talk about it, but briefly, I would say if I'm driving a car to go to work, it's good for me because I go to work on time and I enjoy sitting in my own car, or I can listen to my own music. But that has a negative externality on the society. What's that negative externality? It's the emission and the carbon emission of the car, which causes a harm to the society. And the problem is, like, I'm not paying for that, so I'm causing a harm to the life of other people's, and I'm receiving the benefit, but I do not pay for that cost that I'm causing by riding a car. So in this case, government could also intervene in the market and improve the situation, for example, by imposing carbon dioxide emission gas or making limitations on the type of vehicles that one uses. And externality actually, so when there is a market failure, when a market fails, so one example of that is the externality, that such externality happens. There is one more concept which is called market power, and it's defined as the ability of a single economic actor or small group of actors to have a substantial influence on market prices. So market power is for example, when a company has more influence on the price of a good which they offer. And it happens mostly in monopoly. So when a company has a monopoly power, they have also the power on the price of that service that they are providing. In this book, there is one example of a uh, will which is being used for taking out water from the ground. So if there is only they have given an example of a village and there is only one well in this village, and the owner of this well can charge people uh, for the water whatever price he wishes to charge. So he has the market power on this well, especially on this product which is water. And because he is the only producer of the water in the village, so he can charge any price that he wishes. So he has a power. And in this case, it makes sense for government to intervene in this market and improve the situation for everyone. Alright, so we have covered our second topic as well. I will quickly review. So our second topic was about how people interact, and we discussed the principle number 5, which is the trade can make everyone better off. Then the principles number 6 was that markets are usually a good way to organize economic activities. And then we said that principle 7 says that governments can sometimes improve market outcomes. Now we will go to our last topic, which is about how the economy as a whole works. So our first topic was about individual decision making, second was about how the society make decisions, and now we are talking about the government. So if we put all societies together, then it will be a local economy, or it could be a government or an economy. And the last two principles, the last three principles actually relates to the government. Okay, principle 8 says that a country's standard of living depends on its ability to produce goods and services. I will explain one term in more detail and then we will discuss this topic. And this term is called productivity. It's defined as the quantity of goods and services produced from each unit of labor input. So productivity is how much one labor or one worker produce. And this principle says that the standard living of the people depends how about the ability of that country to produce goods and services. Okay, so if we give the example of Germany, so according to this concept, if German people or if the Germany has a higher standard of living, according to this concept, the productivity of labor here is much higher as compared to other countries, which resulted in a better standard of living in Germany. What does it mean is that the productivity or how much each person or each worker produces here is much more as compared to the same labor in a different country. So that's why most people say like Germany is more efficient, which that means is that their labor are productive and they are more productive, and that's why the standard of living in Germany is higher according to this concept. Okay, we will go to principle 9. It's called prices arise when the government prints too much money. So when government is printing a lot of money, it will result in increase in the prices. So there is one concept of called inflation. It's an increase in the overall level of prices in the economy. So what happens is that when government is printing a lot of money, the value of money will decrease, and that will result in a higher prices, in a higher general prices of goods and services. It's a very deep topic and it requires more discussion, but for now, what we can say is that if government is printing a lot of money in the economy, that will reduce the actual value of the currency. So if there are more money coming in, then there will be, if the government is printing more money, then the value of this money will increase, and that will result in higher prices for goods and services. For example, this book gives an example in Germany that in January 1921, a daily newspaper in Germany cost 0.30 mark. Less than years later, in November 1922, the same newspaper costs 70 million marks. So you see, during the 2 years, the cost of a newspaper has skyrocketed. And the main reason was behind this was that the government was also printing a lot of money in the same period. So when government prints money, the prices will also increase. That's what we can get from this principle. Okay.